There's a drive! Way back! It might be! It could be! It is! Holy cow! Welcome to another broadcast of Bricks Behind the Ivy.
Hey, Cub fans! Welcome to another episode of Bricks Behind the Ivy. I am your host, Jeff Candid Cub Gauskas, and thanks again for joining us on a Cub podcast for Cub fans by Cub fans. Another week of Cubs baseball, and I can honestly say that this was one of the weeks of all time. Yes, that is a joke. It's a bad joke, but it is Father's Day this weekend, and it would only be appropriate that I start the episode with a dad joke. The Cubs have ripped my heart out this week at times, and to the point that I almost collapsed into myself like a dying star. Fandom-wise. Other things are good. Don't worry about Candid Cubs. I'm gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine, right? It's gonna be fine. Anywho, the Cubs definitely struggled this week with another blown save from Hector Neris and a few more one-run losses. Not the most enjoyable brand of baseball to watch of late. But we're going to get right into our regular BBTI content, starting with the Box Score Blitz. This is where we go over the box scores for the last week, including last Thursday's game, since it was not part of last week's Box Score Blitz based on recording time. And we try to do it in a quick manner to get you caught up on all things Cub games. So let's put some time on the clock. 3, 2, 1, go. Game 1 of 4 versus the Redlegs is the 4-game series that started last Thursday, not included last week's Box Score Blitz. It was Hunter Green versus Javier Assad, the ass-man. The Cubs score first in this game with a 2-run home run from Seiya Suzuki, who is heated up as late. But let's play Jeopardy. Name something the Cubs never seem to get. What is a shutdown inning, Alex? Correct! Took the first 3 batters of the next inning. Benson single, Fredo walked, and happy debut anniversary, EDLC. Ellie De La Cruz crushes a 114-mile-per-hour home run and is now 3-2. But guess what? It's rally time for the Cubs. Billy gets a double, and Morale hits his 12th home run of the year. Cubs up 4-3. Remember that shutdown inning joke from a few seconds ago? Well, guess what? The Reds score 2 in the bottom of that inning. Porter Hodge comes into this game, does not get a strike 3 call after getting a first 2 outs in the inning, and he comes undone. He walks in a run. They bring in Kyle Hendricks, who gives up a 2-run single to Benson. The Cubs lose this game 8-4. Game 2, Nick Lodolo versus Justin, Man of Steel. Justin looked really good in this game. He has to be really frustrated with the defense. There was a sequence in the 4th inning. They saw Ellie De La Cruz trying to steal a base. He was leaning. A bad throw from Bush makes him safe at second. Then they get Spencer Steer to strike out, but the ball gets away from Amaya. Everyone is safe. So now this is extra outs in this inning. Tyler Stevenson comes up, hits a 2-run single. It's 2-0. After 2 free outs, he gets 5 outs in that inning, but is still losing. Dansby Swanson switches up to JoJo with some long pantso. Long Pants Dansby hits an opposite field home run, and he is now a Long Pants legend. Cubs have a fake rally in this game. They get a run with 2 outs in the 9th and make it 3-2. Wisdom comes up with a tying run aboard and strikes out a foul tip. Cubs lose 3-2. Justin Steele, magnificent in this game. 7 innings pitched, 5 hits, 1 earned run, 1 walk, 7 Ks, and 16 whiffs. Game 3, Ben Brown versus Andrew Abbott. Another lefty versus the Cubs. Another game where Patrick Wisdom leads off. That's 2 games in a row. Kind of weird, but I guess he crushes lefties. Dansby doubles in the first. Long Pants again. The Cubs take a 1-0 lead. Shutdown inning, sensing a theme. Nope. Yeimer Candelario hits a curve from Ben Brown out and ties the game at 1 immediately. This is Ben Brown's second start versus the Reds in a week, as he had started that Sunday. And TJ Friedel must have bought some stock in UPS because he simply owns Brown. He hits a 2-run homer versus him. It's his 3rd home run in the year. It's 2nd versus Brown, so 66% of his home runs have come against Ben Brown. Cubs once again to get the tying run at 3rd with 2 outs in this game. Ian Happ has to face Justin Wilson from the right side of the plate. Is not as dangerous, even if it's still Great American Ballpark. Pops out. Cubs lose this game 4-3. Game 4, time for some premium TV because it's showtime. Shota Imanaga's on the mound. Nice to see him get the nails in this one. He had 2 rocky-ish starts prior, some of it defensive related, but 6.2 in this one, 5 hits, 2 runs, 1 walk, 7 Ks, a 1.96 ERA on the season, 13 whiffs in the start. Pack your bags for Arlington, Mr. Shota. You're probably going to be an all-star. Cubs woke up for this game. Instead of choosing violence, they chose offense. Ian Happ remembers, hey, it's Great American Ballpark. Unloads the bases in the first with a double to make it 3-0 early. Tauchman tacks on with a single, make it 4-0. Starting to feel like this might be an easy game. No, but not as hard as others. Leiter and Neris come in for the last 2.1 in this one. They give up no hits, only 1 walk, 4 strikeouts. Cubs win a game, 4-2. Hey, but more than 1 run. How about that? Monday is a much-needed off day. Guess what? We're going to St. Petersburg. Cubs are facing Tampa for the first time since 2017 in Tampa. That series was Joe Maddon's return after leaving for the Cubbies, so pretty interesting there. Jameson Taillon versus Zach Eflin in Game 1. Michael Busch at second base. Yeah, Nico Horner had a pitch hit his hand, get some x-rays. They're not conclusive, whatever that means. He's got a broken bone in his hand, but he could potentially play with a broken bone in his hand. It's very confusing. Anyway, Michael Busch is at second. Morel support in this one. He crushes a hand curve. Cubs go up 1-0. Jameson Taillon, not a lot of whiffs early, looked stronger as the start went on. 6-inning pitch, 4 hits, 1 walk, 5 Ks, definitely deserved the win. David Bote pinch hits for Michael Busch later in the game when a lefty comes in, gets a single. It's 2-0 Cubs. Catching shows up as an issue again. Amai kicks a pitch away in an inning from Hayden Wesneski, allowing a runner to score to make it 2-1. Hector Neris comes in for the ninth, and yeah, let's stop making Hector Neris a thing. Let's not make Fetch happen. Let's not make Neris happen. He gives up the lead on a single, and then the next batter, Brandon Lau, crushes a 3-run walk-off homer. Cubs lose this one in heartbreaking fashion. 5-2, their 14th blown save of the year. Hector Neris' 3rd blown save of the year. Game 2, Javier Assad versus Aaron Savali. Guess what? This was an ump show. Early in the game, I could not tell you what was going to be a ball or what was going to be a strike. Usually the reason why we all tune in the games. Not. Cubs got 1-0 early on a Paredes double. Say gets a bomb to center to tie this game up. The Rays immediately take back the lead, sounding familiar, on a Jose Theory posed home run. But the at-bat of the game, 2 outs, 7th inning, Cody Bellinger coming to the plate. They're 2 men on. They bring in Garrett Clevenger, a left-handed pitcher, to face Cody Bellinger, who has traditionally hit lefties pretty well. And guess what? He hits them very, very well. Belly bomb, 3-run home run. Cubs take a 4-2 lead, but Deja vu all over again. Hector Neris comes in, stop making Neris happen. Neris comes in, gives up a bomb to Jose Caballero on a middle fastball. There's a single, there's a walk. Yandy Diaz, who's been heating up. He was last year's American League batting average champ. Comes up, he grounds out. But guess who's coming up next? Brandon Lau, the hero from last night. Lau hits a deep fly ball. PCA moves back and catches it. Watch on the broadcast him visibly sigh or have an exasperated sigh of relief. Hey, the plays are just like us. Cubs win this one 4-3. And that is the box score blitz. Let's take a quick look at the standings, brought to you by Fly the W. Yes, Fly the Double, as in a double, D-O-U-B-L-E, U. It is an Etsy store of Cubs-related stickers. Check this website out. They're super cool. They're perfect for your Stanley, your Yeti, your MacBook. If you're one of those people who puts a bunch of stickers on their Mac, I'm one of those people. Or, like me, maybe you have a locker filled with your Cubs jerseys in your Cub cave, and that's a perfect decorating point. So check out Fly the W on Instagram, and there's a link to the Etsy store today. Thanks for being a sponsor of Bricks Behind the Ivy. Standings. They're depressing to look at as the Cubs continue to not be able to put anything together. The Brewers, are sitting in first place with a surprisingly solid offense at 40-28. In second place are the Cardinals, which feels like shouldn't be possible based on how they started the year. They're 33-34. The Reds are 33-35, as are the Cubs, who are 33-35 in third, and the Paul Skeens' mustache-riding Pittsburgh Pirates are 32-36. Should I give Paul Skeens a standing ovation, even though he's on another team? I don't know. I don't know. Anywho, all the teams in the NL Central are within a game and a half of the wild card, while all also being 6.5 plus behind Milwaukee. So division games, running out of them pretty quick. It's already the middle of June. Division is starting to feel out of reach. It's supposed to be about just getting in and seeing what happens, but that wasn't the design for this season, at least I thought. And it is starting to feel like this season is slipping away as nothing seems to be going right for the Cubs. But speaking of something that is going right, today we have the return of the greatest co-host in the history of BBTI. Sean Hot Stove Cubbies Capen returns as a BBTI correspondent in a new segment we're calling 15 Minutes or Less with Hot Stove Cubbies. Take it away, Sean.
Today's topic we're going to be talking about is why are Cubs fans so mad and disappointed with the team from top to bottom? While I cannot speak on behalf of the entire fan base, I did get a snapshot of consistent comments in X, which will be my focus today. So why are fans mad? Really want to break this down into several different sections where I've consistently heard this on X, had conversations with my Cubs friends and things like that. So why are we mad? Why am I mad? Well, the first one is payroll and tax threshold. The comments from both the front office and ownership didn't do any favors in regards to spending. I mean, when we hear intelligent spending, we automatically cringe because that essentially means no big contracts. I mean, that's what our takeaway is, and not doing what is needed to get the Chicago Cubs to the promised land. I mean, even the playoffs for that matter. Yes, the Cubs have one of the top 10 payrolls. I've heard that before. But honestly, they should be in the top 5 because they're a big market team. Big market teams need to spend money. The Chicago Cubs are very profitable. They need to spend money. On the other hand, on the other side of this, the Cubs have a $225 million payroll for this year. And for a team with a makeup of no prominent superstar like a Bryce Harper, which they should have got, Mookie Betts, Ohtani, Juan Soto, Tatis, Machado, Trout, it's just a fail in roster construction. There's no way to sugarcoat it. This Cubs team had so many opportunities over the year to land a superstar and failed to do so. So when you're looking at the payroll and the tax threshold and that cap, $225 million for this current roster is atrocious. It is unacceptable. Another thing that has come up in one of my next points is roster construction. When you trot out guys like David Bodie, Nick Madrigal, Patrick Wisdom, etc., and you're lining up on a semi-regular basis, I understand there's injuries and stuff like that, but for a $225 million team, there is a problem with roster construction overall. Take a look at the Dodgers, who have the same payroll as the Cubs this year. Now you can say deferred payments and stuff with Ohtani, that keeps things low and all of that, but that's at the Cubs' disposal as well. So there's no excuse there. They have a lineup consisting of Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, Will Smith, etc. to go with a rotation of Glasnow, Yamamoto, and others. You feel like the Cubs front office have failed to put together a strong roster and allocated funds appropriately. The Cubs have glaring holes in their roster for a team of players making up $225 million for 2024. Catcher is a black hole right now. Defense at third base is some of the worst in baseball. They're missing an established elite bullpen arm, and they're missing that middle of the order, oh crap, this guy's coming up to bat with a game on the line type of player. Will those holes be filled at the trade deadline if the Cubs are still in contention? The optimistic side of me, optimistic Cubs fan, says yes, but I'll believe it when I see it. I am really fed up with how this team is looking, and you can tell in my tone the optimistic Cubs fan has grown smaller and smaller with each loss that the Cubs have been taking. These were concerns in the offseason that the Cubs did not do enough to address, and it's proving even more true now that we're in the middle of June. The other point I wanted to bring up, and why folks are still so mad, is the Cubs' competitive window. This is not being talked about enough, and this is more along the lines of my complaint, to be honest with you. The Cubs are in a very interesting position with prospects knocking on the door and established major league players getting ready to leave for free agency. If the Cubs were serious about winning, they would have doubled down this past offseason, and as well as this coming offseason. They didn't do it this past offseason, and I'm not exactly sure that they're going to do it this coming offseason. They should. They should go all in on a Juan Soto. That fits the needs now and in the future. That's the player they need to go for. Will they do it? Probably not. So let's put that on the back burner for right now. Let's take a further look at the Cubs' current contracts and what I mean by competitive window and player contracts. Cody Bellinger has an opt-out after the season. He's likely going to take that. Dansby Swanson has 5 years left on his deal with no trade protection. He'll be 31 for the 2025 season. So production decline will surely take place. Ian Happ, 2 years left on his deal. Again, no trade protection. He'll be 30 for the 2025 season. Deja has 2 years left on his deal. Again, no trade protection. And he will be 30 for the 2025 season. Nico and Jamison Taillon both have 2 years left. Shota has 2 to 4 years depending on the club options and player options. Steele is arbitration 2 next year, so he's going to get a little bit more expensive. As you can see, the window for the current players is closing. So to not take advantage of their prime and those contracts this past offseason with not only significant additions, but also just additions to fill obvious needs was a miss. Matt Chapman was out there. He would have raised the offensive ceiling of this team and improved the defense dramatically at third. He could have been, you could have still trotted out Christopher Morel at third. You could have done that. And if it doesn't work, you have a great fallback option there. You can split time between Chapman at third and Morel at DH. He was a perfect fit, and that was a miss. That's just one example. The last point I want to bring up as we're wrapping things up is a lot of folks have been saying, hey, they're not bringing the kids up. I was actually surprised how loud these comments were on X, and I tend to agree to it for up to a point. Going back to the roster constructions, folks are simply tired of getting roster spots and playing time to players like Wisdom, Gomes, Mastrobuoni, and Madrigal. These comments even gain more steam, and you get more anger when you see what Alexander Canario has been doing, or the heater by Brennan Davis, both on the 40-man roster. There's no reason not to bring them up, in my opinion. Not to mention the solid season Owen Casey has had. These are 3 players who are doing extremely well in AAA. To pair their hot streaks, what amplifies this even more is the icy cold spell the Cubs regulars and folks like me have been screaming for some change. This, when you have one thing that is happening and then drastically another thing that is also happening, you're gonna get that more anger, that more passion, all of that. So when our Cubs are failing to meet expectations, yet we're seeing these players down in AAA just go off and go on these absolute tears, you're gonna want that change. One thing that this does help to bring up those players is you get to see what you have in a Brendan Davis. You get to see what you have in an Alexander Canario. Give them more at bats, and at the same time, you're showcasing them as prospects at the big league level to potentially use that farm depth to make a mid-season trade, to make an off-season trade. There is so much value there. It just seems like a win-win on the surface. And I can't disagree with the folks. Let's bring up the kids and see what they can do. While the Cubs are still in the wild card hunt, us as Cubs fans have every reason to be frustrated, angry, and disappointed. Our only hope is things that either start changing with the things we discussed today, or the Cubs can simply turn things around. This has been 15 minutes or less with Hot Stove Cubbies. Back to you, Jeff.
It's easy to relate to a bunch of Cub fans feeling frustrated about this squad, as I am feeling frustrated about this squad. But there's one thing I'm never that frustrated about, and that is my experience with Wrigleyville Sports. Had a conversation with Wrigleyville Sports this week. We've got some fun stuff cooking for you guys and all you brickheads out there. So stay tuned for more information on that. But in the meantime, there is a link in the podcast description for Wrigleyville Sports Store. Check it out. Got the best Cub stuff, tons of stock. One of the best things that they do is, first of all, they're family owned, which is awesome. Small business. And if you're down there for a Cub game, they make their custom jerseys right there. You can order a custom jersey and get it in an hour or so and wear it to the game. How awesome is that? So check out Wrigleyville Sports today. And when you're in checkout online, using the link in the description, use code BRICKS10 for 10% off of your purchase. Yes, BRICKS10, 10% off. Thank you, Wrigleyville Sports, for being a continued part of the BBTI Pod family. You guys are the biggest brickheads I know. So I do want to just take a second to reflect on some of the things that Sean had said and add a little bit of piece of frustration I'm having with this team. And the biggest one for me is potentially roster construction, asset management, and the coming trade deadline and what the CBT means in that. And I'll explain what I mean here. The Cubs went in this season clearly with no plan at third base. And that has bit them in the, I'm not going to use a censor button, but that's bit them in the butt, bit them in the behind. And Christopher Morel has been tough to watch at times, not tough to watch at times, and really tough to watch at times at third base. And the offensive production, I think, is coming. There's lots of stats. The swing rate is down. The chase rate is down. The end zone rate is great. The walk percentage is up. A lot of things you want to see from a young hitter. The power is real. The bat speed is real. But it hasn't translated into an extremely hot stretch for him yet. And there's a lot of bat pip, bad luck in there as well. But needless to say, Sean and I were pounding the table for a guy like Matt Chapman this past offseason, depending on contract. And the contract that he got isn't that bad. It's very similar to Cody Bellinger's with opt-outs as it was constructed by Boris. But I do believe that there was commentary towards the end of the offseason that they, at one point, they were saying they were looking at two of the Boris free agents. And then it came down, well, they can only actually afford one of them. And I'm not saying that I'm upset with Cody Bellinger. I am saying that I don't understand this team's inability or lack of interest in going above the first CBT threshold. Their current payroll is 8th in baseball, $233 million. That's nothing to shake a stick at. That's spending money. Like, as much as people want to point to ownership or point at Jed for not spending money, that's not the issue. If there is going to be a CBT threshold enforcement as a cap by the ownership group, or if that's how Jed wants to operate, etc., then deployment of these assets does become extremely important. And I'm looking at right now Drew Smyly, Kyle Hendricks, and Jan Gomes equaling $33 million of that current cap of that current payroll and providing negative 1.7 WAR. That's just not going to cut it. And two of those guys are sitting in the pen and getting very few reps, and the other one's catching ability and offensive ability have dropped off faster than I think anyone expected. Now, in a vacuum, the $10.5 million that Drew Smyly is getting wasn't necessarily for him to be a bullpen piece, but to be a starting depth, which in today's game, having starting depth if you're trying to compete is extremely important, especially major league quality starting depth. And the Cubs have gotten a lot of major league starting quality or depth this year from guys in their system. Jordan Wicks, we've seen Ben Brown come up and be very, very solid, but it's becoming evident he needs a third pitch. And we've gotten a lot of run out of Javier Assad, who was supposed to be a swingman in this bullpen, but he has been pretty solid in the rotation. But yeah, the elephant in the room that I have barely been able to admit is Kyle Hendricks, who hasn't pitched in a number of days, isn't going to be pitching in games that are close, which all the Cub games have been close. So his numbers just his numbers not going to get called often, and he's making $16.5 million this year, which again in a vacuum isn't a terrible deal for a starting pitcher that produced like he did last season, but he's not producing that way anymore. And that $26 million, that $27 million that is sitting in the bullpen with barely any use is blocking guys that can come up and help this team that is having bullpen issues. And it's becoming more and more frustrating. And then the $6 million that Jan Gomes is getting in a vacuum as well is not a bad move. We thought that he would be defensively solid and be a veteran as Amaya developed, but Amaya's not developing, and his drop off has been pretty stark. So that's that's very little production from $33 million of your payroll. Not to mention the $5 million they're paying Tucker Barnhart and the $7 million they're paying Trey Mancini to sit on his pepper farm, and Tucker Barnhart to not play. And you don't want to sit here and assess a $5 billion organization for these financial hiccups, because mistakes are going to happen in construction of a roster. My concern is, as a team that's worth $5 billion and a team that is going to be losing a lot of this money off of their payroll next year, giving them ample room to move past the CBT or towards the CBT again, that these things seem to be restricting their ability to address the roster as a whole. Which brings us to the trade deadline and my concern and their interest in going above the CBT, only being $4 million at $233 million away from it, but the first threshold is $237 million. It is adjudicated the same way if you go above prior to the season or during the season. So are the Cubs going to look to move money prior to making any deals? Or are they not going to take on money to diminish prospect packages in return to other teams, depending on the player or the deal? These are questions I'm starting to think about as we get to the trade deadline, because of this organization's allergy to that first threshold. And like I said, there's a significant amount of payroll coming off at the end of this year. Those 5 players I stated being them, and that's a significant amount of that money. And it would immediately take them off of any concern of penalty, because you have to be above the CBT thresholds for a number of years before there are penalties. And then once you move under, that timeline resets. So this was a year in which you could have comfortably gone over the CBT, at least the first threshold, and not worry about any penalty given what is coming off the books. So when we're talking about asset allocation as well, you look at the Cubs' plethora of outfield options or top prospect options that could come up to this team and ignite a little bit of a fire, because they have looked pretty flat. And watching these games, since they've been the same, haven't been exciting close games. They've been flat games in which a flat team has not been able to win baseball games. So I see fans calling all the time for Owen Casey or a Matt Shaw to play third base, or Alexander Canario, Brennan Davis, as these guys have heated up at different points in Iowa. But the fact of the matter is, all but Shaw there are outfielders. So who are you taking out of this lineup? Who are you taking off of the major league roster without an injury to put those guys in? I know that Cubs Twitter's immediate reaction is to bench guys like Seiya Suzuki or Ian Happ, but those guys have sizable contracts and based on their pedigree have earned extra time or whatever you want to call it to right the ship offensively, and the Cubs are going to need potentially near guaranteed or better guaranteed production from this offense if they're going to go anywhere. These guys that come from the minors aren't guaranteed to perform once they get to the majors, but we are interested in seeing what they're able to do. So it seemed like a prime time this offseason that if we were committed to Ian Happ and Seiya Suzuki, as this front office has seemed to have decided to use that depth of outfielders to add something to this roster, either that was meaningful or use those players to add something around the edges to make this team a better team. And specifically now looking at the bullpen or a bat that has a little more slug. So instead, we sit here wondering, what direction is this team going to go? Is Jed enamored with these prospects and he doesn't want to give them up in a deal? Obviously, you don't want to give these guys up in a rental because that's not the stage this organization seems to be, that one rental is going to catapult them into World Series favorites like the acquisition of Aroldis Chapman in 2016. But are you going to move Owen Casey and Canario and guys like Davis if you're not enamored with the outfield production you're getting right now from Ian Happ and Seiya Suzuki? Are guys like that going to get dangled? I highly doubt it. Ian Happ has a no trade clause, and Seiya Suzuki has a decent amount of money left on his deal. But Seiya Suzuki has proven to be a DH, which Christopher Morel has as well. And now we've come full circle of there are a lot of guys that just aren't fitting into this roster. And the identity of this team was supposed to be defense. At least that was my expectation, and how they talked about this team and how locked up Nico Horner and Dansby Swanson, how important that was going to be. And PCA coming, the defense has let this team down almost more than the bullpen. So the Cubs need to make a move to stabilize this ship, or start signaling to other teams what those moves are going to be. And without a star, a guy who sells jerseys, a guy who you can put on marquees, pun intended, without that guy, this team is an accumulation of solid human beings, solid baseball players, that when they all struggle, it looks like this. There's not one that has this pedigree of a heater that's going to carry this team like Cody Bellinger did for a very long stretch last year, which theoretically could still happen, but carried this team for a very long stretch last year to get them back into a race. And right now, that is very plausible. Just watching the way the games have been going day to day for a significant amount of time just feels less and less and less likely. On that happy note, I'm happy to report that Harry Caray is going to be paying us a visit today with another Deep Hot Thoughts with Harry Caray, brought to you by Wrigley Fire Bar and Grill. Check out Wrigley Fire Bar and Grill on Facebook today. See what you got, Harry.
Holy cow! Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Deep Thoughts with yours truly, Harry Caray. How are you? And welcome to Bricks Behind the Ivy. And as you can see, I'm wearing the Great Rhino in honor of the greatest second baseman, not only in Cubs history, but in baseball itself. Because this coming June 23rd, the Great Rhino is getting his statue outside of Wrigley. And well, I gotta tell you, it's about damn time. All those great summer days watching him play over at the 2-bag. It was glorious. So you know what, Rhino? From me and all the guys in the booth and all us Cub fans, this bud's for you. Boy, oh boy. But you know what? Let's take a trip back in time to early June when we took the old, let me get in my Mike Tyson, the 1-2 punch to those bums on the south side, the White Sox. That's right, I said it, and I'm not going to defend it. When we beat the White Sox in round 1 of the Crosstown Classic. Boy, it never gets old. I had the boys in the booth run me some stats again because, you know, I'm a little inebriated. Ooh, boy. So let's take a trip back. Let's look at Tuesday, June 4th, you know. Shota Imanaga, you know, he didn't have his best stuff that night. You know, maybe he was out on Rush Street, you know, maybe having a couple of cocktails. Maybe woke up a little late, got over to the ballpark and didn't have his best stuff. But you know what? That's all right. He got a little roughed up. But you know what? We put on our little rally hats on and we got it going. We had a little bit of late day heroics courtesy of Christopher Morel and old P-Wizzy, Patrick Wisdom. But you know, we had to give the old hat. I didn't put a hat on today because I didn't want to mess up the quad. But a good hat's off to our good old buddy, Connect Roaster himself, Ian Happ. He went 3 for 4 with 2 double, 2-run scores and 2 RBIs. So a little sip of the cappuccino to you there, buddy. Then the Cubs win. 7-6. Luke Little. Boy, that guy's huge. He got the W on the day. So that was game 1. And then we went to the following night where Jameson Taillon got the hill. You know, Taillon spelled backwards is Noliat. Boy, oh, but Steve, how many times have I told you put out the cigar? Anyway, you know, yet again, a starting pitcher got roughed up with, he threw the first pitch of the ball game and boom, shakalaka, the thing went yardo. And then he got roughed up with another 4 runs in the 4th inning. Once again, we're sitting looking down at a 5-hole deficit. Boy, oh boy, I haven't seen it that bad since I found Van Aken passed out by a dumpster on Rush Street. Anyway, we had to come back again. The good news about this ball game, the bullpen held it together. We only gave up 1 more run. And then the Rally Caps came back on again. We got 2 in the 5th. We got 3 in the 7th. And let me put on the old... Here we are. It's the bottom of the 9th, the 1-0 pitch to Tachman. There's a drive way back into left field. It could be, it might be, and Cubs win. Cubs win. That's right, everybody. Mikey Tachman went yardo for the game-winning donger, and the Cubs win 7-6. That guy went 2 for 4 with a walk, a ribby, and 3 runs on the night. Boy, I'm glad we got this guy. He's a journeyman, but he's doing a great job. So, you know, Mikey, this buzz for you too. Boy, that's good. You know, so that was great to see that the Cubs swept. You know, they got the brooms out, swept those bums over on the south side. Great to see. We'll see you again, everybody. So from all of us here at the Wrigley Fire Bar and Grill, so long, everybody. Cubs win. Cubs win.
First of all, I love every time Harry can show up for the pod. Always a treat. Second of all, Pat Erickson, our other correspondent here at BBTI, is a national treasure and a loyal Brickhead. So thanks, Pat, for everything you do for BBTI. Well, that'll do it for us this week on Bricks Behind the Ivy, a Cubs podcast for Cub fans by Cub fans. I hope I didn't bum you out too much with some of my conversation, but as the season goes on, I do have some questions for this organization and for this team if things don't if the ship doesn't straighten out soon. And I don't know if that is a fair thing to be saying on June. I'll be as excited as all of you if they go on some winning streak and put themselves right in the middle of the wild card race. And I'll be cheering just as hard for them then as I cheer for them now. But the day in, day out monotony of this one-run loss situation that seems to have been going on since mid-May has been exhausting. And these bags under my eyes are not just 2 kids under 7 related, but a Cub fan for nearly 30 years and tired of watching this team related. But we'll see you next week for another episode next Friday of Bricks Behind the Ivy. If you are listening, please check us out on YouTube, where we are having a contest. How do you enter? I'm so glad you asked. All you have to do is go to our YouTube page and hit the subscribe button. Once you do that, check out this episode, episode 20, episode 18 or 19, and comment with hashtag Brickhead. 3 lucky winners once we reach 50 subscribers. We're at 44 right now. Will receive a Bricks Behind the Ivy swag pack, which will be a mug, a sticker, and a shirt. But guess what? There's more. Once Bricks Behind the Ivy gets to 100 subscribers, I will give 3 lucky fans that use the hashtag Brickhead under each subsequent episode after episode 18 a pair of my Cub tickets. Yes, you could go to a Cub game for free. 2 free Cub tickets for 3 of you once we get to 100 subscribers. Don't want to just see us on YouTube? Check us out on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and Facebook. All those links are in the description of the pod. See you guys next week. Love all you Brickheads for listening, and go Cubs.